Welcome to Radiant Wisdom, where life's questions meet mindful reflections and every setback becomes a stepping stone toward growth. Today we're talking about something that connects every single one of us, no matter our background or story: failure. It's a word that can make our hearts sink and our minds spiral with worry. We've all been there, standing in the aftermath of an unexpected loss. A dream that didn't materialize, or a path that led somewhere completely different than we had hoped. In those moments, it's easy to feel defeated and disconnected. But what if I told you that failure isn't the end of the road? In fact, what if failure was never about the loss itself, but about the meaning we give it? In this episode, we'll reframe failure, not as a period at the end of a sentence, but as a comma, a brief pause that leads us into something more profound. Many of us spend our lives striving for success, building plans, and pouring everything we have into our goals. And that's a beautiful thing. But when things don't work out the way we envisioned, we tend to view that experience through a lens of inadequacy. We wonder, was it my fault? Or, what could I have done differently? Sometimes, we even start believing that we're fundamentally incapable, or worse, that we're destined to fall short. These thoughts are heavy, but they're also universal. Whether it's a career that didn't pan out, a relationship that ended, or a personal goal that remains just out of reach, failure can feel like a personal storm, a storm that leaves us questioning our worth and doubting our path. But here's something to remember: we are not alone in this journey. History's greatest thinkers, innovators, and leaders, people we admire, have all faced their own moments of defeat. Yet they didn't allow failure to define them. Instead, they used it as an opportunity to rebuild stronger foundations. Their setbacks became their stories of resilience. This isn't just about motivation, it's about awareness. In today's fast-paced world, failure is often seen as a weakness or a flaw. We scroll past perfectly curated snapshots of success on social media, wondering why our lives don't look as polished or triumphant. But behind every highlight reel, there are unseen moments of struggle and quiet perseverance. So today, let's slow down together. Let's step away from comparisons and quiet the inner critic that whispers, "You're not enough." Instead, let's create a space to reframe failure as a necessary, even transformative part of life. We'll explore how failure can serve as a mirror, revealing our deepest fears and untapped strengths. We'll discuss why it's okay to feel disappointment, but also why we shouldn't rush to fix or numb that discomfort with distractions or false reassurances. Instead, we can learn to be still with our emotions, to sit with our vulnerability, and in doing so, discover the quiet strength within ourselves. Throughout this episode, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Think about the setbacks that shaped you, not just the ones that caused you pain, but the ones that forced you to grow in ways you never expected. How did those experiences make you who you are today? How can you honor the lessons they taught you, even if the wounds they left behind are still healing? By the end of this reflection, I hope you'll walk away with a new perspective on failure, one that embraces it as a part of life's natural rhythm rather than an obstacle to be feared. So, wherever you are, whether you're listening in your car, at home with a cup of coffee, or taking a mindful walk, take a deep breath. This is your moment to pause and remind yourself that you are not defined by any single chapter of your story. Thank you for being here. If this resonates with you, I encourage you to like, share, and join the conversation in the comments. Your thoughts and reflections not only enrich this community, but may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Let's take this journey together, one thoughtful step at a time. Now, let's dive into the heart of today's story, embracing failure and transforming it into wisdom. The fear of failure. Failure, it's a word that stirs up anxiety in most of us. The fear of failing can be paralyzing, and it often feels like a shadow that follows us in everything we do. Whether it's taking a leap in our careers, pursuing a passion project, or even navigating relationships, the fear of failure whispers, "What if this doesn't work out?" What if I'm not good enough? But why does failure have such a grip on us? Why do we associate it with shame, embarrassment, and inadequacy? The answer lies in our innate human need for security and validation. From a young age, many of us are taught that success is the ultimate goal, a marker of our worth and competency. When we succeed, we are praised and celebrated. But when we stumble, the silence can feel deafening. Society often overlooks the value of mistakes and magnifies the triumphs, conditioning us to avoid failure at all costs. And this fear is not just emotional, it's physical. Studies show that when we anticipate failure, our bodies react as though we're facing a real threat. Our heart rate spikes, palms sweat, and muscles tense up. It's a survival instinct, an ancient response designed to protect us from danger. But in modern life, the danger isn't a predator in the wild. It's the risk of feeling unworthy or being judged by others. Think about how often fear of failure keeps you from trying something new. Maybe you've hesitated to apply for a dream job, fearing rejection. Or perhaps you've held back from sharing your creative work because you worry it won't be good enough. This internal voice convinces us that avoiding failure is safer than risking vulnerability. But in reality, playing it safe often means missing out on life's most meaningful experiences. Here's the paradox: the more we fear failure, the more power we give it. When we view failure as catastrophic, even small setbacks can feel monumental. For example, a missed deadline at work can spiral into self-doubt, leading you to question your competence entirely. But is one setback really a sign of failure, or is it simply a misstep along a longer journey? The truth is, failure is rarely final. It's a moment in time, not a permanent label. But when we avoid failure out of fear, we also avoid the growth that comes with it. We miss the chance to learn resilience, to adapt, and to uncover strengths we didn't know we had. Take a moment to consider, what's the worst that could happen if you failed at something important to you? Let's say you pursued a new venture and it didn't work out. Yes, you might experience disappointment. You might even lose resources like time or money. But beyond the initial sting, failure often leaves us with valuable insights, lessons that refine our approach for the future. In fact, many of history's greatest success stories were born from failure. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000,000 ways that won't work." His invention of the light bulb wasn't a one-time stroke of genius. It was the result of relentless trial and error. Every failure brought him closer to his breakthrough. Yet, it's not just inventors and entrepreneurs who face failure. It's all of us. The person struggling with a fitness goal, the writer facing rejection letters, or the parent learning how to navigate challenges with their children. Each of us experiences failure in ways both big and small. And while it may sting, failure reminds us that we are trying. It means we are showing up, putting ourselves out there, and daring to pursue something meaningful. One of the most powerful steps we can take in our lives is to reframe the way we see failure. Instead of viewing it as proof of inadequacy, we can see it as feedback, evidence that we're learning, growing, and evolving. It's not easy to do, especially in a world that glorifies flawless success, but the most fulfilled individuals are often those who have learned to embrace their imperfections, to accept that failure is an inevitable part of progress. So the next time fear of failure creeps in, pause and ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of? And is that fear bigger than the possibility of growth? More often than not, you'll find that your fear of failure is only as powerful as the story you attach to it, and you have the power to rewrite that story. Failure isn't the enemy, it's a teacher. When we acknowledge that truth, failure loses its ability to define us. Instead of a dead end, it becomes a fork in the road, a chance to choose courage over comfort, growth over safety, and resilience over fear. In those moments, we begin to see that the fear of failure is just that, a fear. And like all fears, it can be faced, understood, and eventually transformed into something far greater. The real failure isn't in falling short, it's in never daring to try at all. chasing distractions after setbacks. When life doesn't go as planned and failure hits, our instinctive reaction is often to do something, anything, to escape the pain. We look for distractions to fill the void and ease the discomfort. We might throw ourselves into another project, scroll endlessly on social media, binge-watch shows, or even seek out instant validation from others. The logic is simple. If I can keep myself busy enough, I won't have to sit with this feeling. But here's the truth. Distractions may offer temporary relief, but they rarely lead to healing. In fact, they often keep us stuck in a cycle of avoidance, where we never truly process the emotions that failure stirs within us. Think about it. Have you ever watched someone jump from one relationship to another after a painful breakup, hoping the next person will erase the hurt of the last? Or maybe you've seen a colleague lose their job and immediately take the first opportunity that comes their way, not because it's the right fit, but because they're desperate to prove they're still capable. In both cases, the underlying wounds remain unaddressed, and the need to fix things quickly becomes the driving force behind their decisions. This pattern is so common because, as humans, we crave certainty and control. When failure shakes our foundation, we feel unmoored, like the ground beneath us has disappeared. The rush to distract ourselves, to fill the gaps as quickly as possible, is an attempt to regain a sense of stability. But this quick fix mindset often backfires, leaving us feeling more exhausted and disconnected than before. Why? Because distractions don't solve the problem, they only mask it. When we try to outrun the discomfort of failure, we miss the opportunity to understand what that discomfort is teaching us. Instead of listening to our emotions and reflecting on what went wrong, we focus on patching up our pride and proving to ourselves, and sometimes to the world, that we're still okay. But deep down, we know that those surface-level victories can't heal what's broken within. Consider this metaphor. Imagine you have a deep wound. Instead of cleaning and treating it, you cover it with a bandage and pretend it's fine. At first, it might seem like the pain is manageable, but without proper care, the wound can fester. The same thing happens emotionally when we avoid addressing the pain of failure. What starts as a minor setback can grow into a deeper sense of disillusionment if we don't take the time to heal intentionally. To be clear, this doesn't mean we should dwell on our failures endlessly or sink into self-pity. Reflection and rumination are not the same. Reflection allows us to understand and learn from our setbacks, while rumination traps us in a cycle of blame and regret. The key is to find a balance, to create space for honest introspection without getting stuck in negative thought loops. So how do we resist the urge to chase distractions and instead embrace meaningful reflection? 1. Acknowledge the discomfort. The first step is to admit that failure hurts. It's okay to feel disappointed, frustrated, or even embarrassed. Suppressing these emotions doesn't make them disappear, it only buries them deeper. By naming and acknowledging our feelings, we begin to take away their power. 2. Resist the impulse to fix everything immediately. Instead of rushing into action, allow yourself a moment of stillness. This might mean taking a day or even a few weeks to step back and regain clarity. It's not about giving up. It's about giving yourself the grace to pause and reflect before you move forward. 3. Reflect with curiosity, not judgment. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? Rather than, why did I mess up? Shifting your mindset from blame to curiosity opens the door to self-compassion and growth. 4. Choose intentional actions, not reactive ones. When you're ready to take your next step, make sure it's aligned with your values and long-term goals, rather than driven by fear or a need for validation. This could mean saying no to something that looks good on paper but doesn't feel right, or taking a slower, more deliberate path forward. It's also important to note that you don't have to go through this process alone. Seeking support from friends, family, or a mentor can offer valuable perspective. Sometimes just sharing your thoughts out loud can make them feel more manageable and less overwhelming. When we stop chasing distractions and start facing our setbacks head-on, something remarkable happens. Instead of feeling trapped by our failures, we begin to feel empowered by the lessons they offer. We realize that failure isn't a reflection of our worth, it's an invitation to grow, to become more resilient, and to realign with what truly matters. The next time you're tempted to keep busy to avoid the discomfort of failure, remember this: stillness isn't a sign of weakness, it's an act of courage. In that stillness, you give yourself permission to heal. And from that place of healing, your next chapter begins, not with desperation, but with intention and purpose. Ultimately, setbacks don't define us. It's how we respond to them that shapes the course of our lives. Will we choose distraction, or will we choose transformation? The answer lies within us. The spiritual path and overcompensation. When failure leaves us feeling lost, many of us turn to spirituality for comfort, healing, and meaning. It's a natural response. Failure often makes us question our purpose and seek something deeper than external achievements. The spiritual path offers the promise of inner peace, resilience, and a renewed sense of self-worth. But even here, the journey isn't always as simple or pure as we might hope. One of the pitfalls that many encounter on the spiritual path is the tendency to overcompensate for their failures. Instead of seeking authentic healing, they set ambitious, even unrealistic, spiritual goals in an attempt to prove their worth, either to themselves, others, or even a higher power. They might think, if I become the most dedicated, disciplined, and enlightened version of myself, I'll erase my past failures. On the surface, this drive can look like noble ambition. We see it in people who adopt rigorous meditation practices, immerse themselves in self-improvement literature, or completely overhaul their lifestyles. But beneath this urgency is often a subtle form of the same insecurity that failure triggered in the first place. Instead of healing from within, they're trying to rebuild their sense of worth through yet another external pursuit, this time in the form of spiritual accomplishment. The irony is that spirituality is supposed to be about letting go of ego, not feeding it. When we approach the spiritual path with a mindset of overcompensation, we're still clinging to the need for validation. We've simply replaced the traditional markers of success, like wealth, recognition, or status, with new ones, like inner peace, enlightenment, or wisdom. But true spiritual growth can't be measured or rushed. In fact, the very act of striving to achieve spirituality can pull us further away from genuine transformation. Consider someone who joins a spiritual community after experiencing a devastating personal loss, perhaps a failed marriage or a career setback. Instead of taking time to process their grief and gently rebuild their sense of self, they throw themselves into spiritual practices with relentless intensity. They attend every retreat, memorize teachings, and push themselves to live by rigid principles. While this dedication might seem admirable, it can also become a form of self-punishment. Rather than accepting their humanity, they're trying to transcend it too quickly, bypassing the necessary emotional work. This phenomenon is sometimes called spiritual bypassing. It's when we use spirituality as a way to avoid dealing with uncomfortable emotions like anger, sadness, or shame. Instead of acknowledging these feelings, we suppress them under the guise of being positive or staying mindful. But unprocessed emotions don't just disappear. They linger in the background, affecting our thoughts, behaviors, and relationships. True spirituality isn't about escaping pain. It's about facing it with compassion and courage. It's about sitting with our discomfort, listening to what it has to teach us, and allowing ourselves to grow, not through force, but through surrender. This kind of growth is slow, messy, and often uncomfortable, but it's also deeply authentic. So how do we recognize when we're overcompensating on our spiritual journey? 1. Notice when you're performing rather than practicing. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values? Or because I want to be seen a certain way by others or by myself? True spirituality is quiet and personal. It doesn't need to be announced or proven. 2. Pay attention to your emotional honesty. Are you allowing yourself to feel sadness, frustration, and fear? Or are you forcing yourself to always appear calm and serene? It's okay to have moments of vulnerability. Spiritual growth doesn't mean you stop being human. 3. Resist the urge to set timelines for healing. Healing and growth don't follow a schedule. You don't have to reach a certain level of inner peace by a specific date. Trust that your journey is unfolding at the pace it's meant to. 4. Be mindful of comparison. In the age of social media, even spirituality can become competitive. You might see people posting about their morning meditations or their breakthroughs in mindfulness and wonder if you're behind. But spirituality isn't a race. It's a deeply personal path that can't be measured by external milestones. Ultimately, spirituality is not about proving anything. It's about embracing who you are, flaws and all. When we stop trying to overcompensate for our failures and instead lean into acceptance, we free ourselves from the pressure to be perfect. We learn that our worth isn't tied to our successes or our spiritual achievements. It's inherent. Failure can be a profound invitation to explore our inner world, to let go of the external markers we once clung to, and to reconnect with our most authentic selves. But we must approach this path with humility, patience, and self-compassion, not as a way to fix ourselves, but as a way to rediscover the wholeness that was always there. In the end, the spiritual path isn't about transcending our humanity, it's about embracing it fully. The setbacks, the doubts, the grief, all of it is part of the journey. When we stop trying to win at spirituality and start showing up as we truly are, that's when real transformation begins. As the saying goes, the wound is where the light enters you. So instead of rushing to cover the wound, let the light in. Let it heal you, not because you're broken, but because you're already whole. Recognizing the conditions of success. Success is often portrayed as a simple result of effort and determination. We're taught from an early age that if we work hard enough, stay disciplined, and never give up, we will achieve our dreams. While there is some truth in this belief, life is rarely that straightforward. Success, as it turns out, is not just about personal grit. It's about timing, external circumstances, and the convergence of countless factors, some of which are beyond our control. One of the biggest myths surrounding success is the idea that it's entirely within our power to achieve. This belief can be empowering when things are going well. It makes us feel in charge of our destiny. But when we face setbacks, this same belief can turn against us, making failure feel like a personal flaw. We tell ourselves, if I had just worked harder, been smarter, or made fewer mistakes, I would have succeeded. But is that really true? In reality, success is like a recipe. It requires many ingredients, and not all of them are in our kitchen. Some ingredients come from the outside world: opportunities, mentorship, timing, and sometimes sheer luck. Others come from within: perseverance, skill, emotional resilience, and vision. Even when we have all the internal qualities needed for success, if the external conditions aren't right, success may still elude us. Think of a farmer planting seeds. The farmer can choose the best seeds, prepare the soil perfectly, and water the plants diligently. But if there's an unexpected drought or an early frost, the crop may still fail. Does that mean the farmer wasn't skilled or hard-working enough? Of course not. It means that some conditions were simply outside of their control. Understanding the role that external factors play in success doesn't mean that we should become passive or stop striving. It means adopting a more compassionate, realistic view of our efforts and outcomes. Instead of blaming ourselves entirely when things don't work out, we can recognize that failure isn't always about a lack of ability. it's often about circumstances that weren't aligned. But how do we discern what's within our control and what isn't? How do we recognize the conditions that foster success versus those that make it difficult to thrive? Here are a few key steps. 1. Identify the external factors that influence success. Take a step back and examine the external conditions surrounding your goal. Are there factors like market trends, economic shifts, or organizational politics at play? For example, a talented business owner can launch an incredible product, but if the market isn't ready for it, the product may struggle. Recognizing these factors doesn't mean you're giving up, it means you're acknowledging the full picture and making more informed decisions moving forward. 2. Focus on what you can control. While external conditions may shape the playing field, your mindset, preparation, and effort still matter. Ask yourself, what actions can I take to strengthen my position regardless of the circumstances? Maybe it's learning a new skill, seeking feedback, or building relationships that could open new doors. By focusing on the things you can influence, you reclaim a sense of agency and avoid falling into a victim mentality. 3. Embrace patience and timing. Sometimes, success requires patience. Just because something didn't work out today doesn't mean it's a failure forever. Some goals take time, and setbacks often create opportunities for growth that we don't recognize until later. Timing can make or break an endeavor, and part of resilience is knowing when to press forward and when to step back and recalibrate. 4. Redefine what success means to you. Our culture often defines success in narrow terms: money, accolades, and recognition. But is that the only kind of success worth pursuing? Take time to reflect on what success truly means to you. Is it building meaningful relationships, contributing to your community, or finding joy in your work? When we broaden our definition of success, we open ourselves up to new ways of appreciating our journey, even when the results don't look like traditional wins. 5. Learn from setbacks without shame. When success doesn't materialize, it's easy to internalize the failure as proof that we're not enough. But every setback holds valuable lessons. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" try asking, "What can I learn from this?" This subtle shift allows you to approach your experiences with curiosity rather than self-criticism. 6. Be open to new paths. Sometimes, failure is a sign that we're pursuing a goal that no longer aligns with who we are or what we truly need. Success isn't always about persistence, it's also about adaptability. If the conditions around you make one path impossible, it might be time to explore a different direction. This isn't quitting, it's recalibrating with wisdom and purpose. When we understand that success is shaped by both internal effort and external conditions, we develop a more balanced perspective. We stop viewing setbacks as the end of the road and start seeing them as moments of reflection and adjustment. Just because the conditions for success weren't present in one season doesn't mean they won't be present in the next. There's a powerful freedom in recognizing that some things are simply out of our control. It frees us from carrying the weight of unrealistic expectations and allows us to focus on the parts of the journey that matter most: our growth, resilience, and authenticity. In the end, success isn't just about achieving a specific goal, it's about who we become in the process. When we learn to recognize the conditions of success and approach our setbacks with grace, we develop a quiet confidence that can't be shaken by circumstances alone. We begin to trust that, when the right conditions align, our efforts will bloom in ways we never imagined. And until then, we keep tending to the seeds, knowing that the journey itself is a success worth celebrating. Failure as a mirror for the self. Failure has a unique way of holding up a mirror to our inner world, revealing things we might not have noticed about ourselves. In moments of success, it's easy to feel invincible, confident, and secure. But when failure strikes, the cracks in our self-possession often become visible. Suddenly, doubts we've suppressed rise to the surface, Insecurities we've ignored demand our attention, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are get put to the test. At first, this reflection can be uncomfortable, even painful. Failure doesn't just show us where we fell short externally. It shines a light on our internal struggles, our fears, attachments, and sometimes the parts of ourselves we've been avoiding. But if we're willing to look closely and without judgment, failure can become one of the most profound teachers we'll ever encounter. One of the first things failure often reveals is our relationship with self-worth. For many of us, our sense of value is tied to our achievements. We believe that if we succeed, we're worthy of love and respect, but if we fail, we're somehow less than. This belief can lead to a fragile sense of self that crumbles when things don't go according to plan. But failure gives us an opportunity to challenge this narrative. It asks us, who are you when the accolades and accomplishments are stripped away? Can you still see your inherent worth? In this way, failure can be an invitation to build a more unconditional sense of self-worth, one that isn't dependent on external validation. It encourages us to shift from "I am valuable because I succeeded" to "I am valuable, period." This is a difficult but powerful mindset shift, and it often only emerges after we've experienced the humbling sting of failure. Failure also highlights our emotional triggers and coping mechanisms. When things fall apart, how do we react? Do we blame others or ourselves? Do we shut down and withdraw, or do we lash out in frustration? Do we seek distractions to avoid confronting the pain, or do we rush into action without reflection? The way we respond to failure can tell us a lot about our emotional habits and thought patterns. For example, someone who feels the need to immediately fix a failure may be driven by a fear of appearing weak or incapable. On the other hand, someone who retreats completely after a setback may be protecting themselves from further disappointment. Neither response is inherently good or bad, but both offer insights into the beliefs and fears that influence our behavior. By observing these reactions with curiosity instead of criticism, we can begin to understand ourselves on a deeper level. Failure also reveals our attachments, the things we've built our identity around. Maybe it's a job title, a relationship, or a long-held dream. When we fail at something that's closely tied to our sense of self, it can feel like we've lost a part of who we are. But this loss can also lead to a kind of liberation. It forces us to ask, is this who I really am, or have I been defining myself by something external? This process of self-inquiry can be uncomfortable, but it's also an opportunity to redefine ourselves in a more authentic way. Instead of clinging to an identity that's dependent on external success, we can begin to cultivate an inner sense of purpose and resilience, one that isn't shaken by failure. Perhaps one of the most profound lessons that failure offers is the importance of self-compassion. When we succeed, it's easy to be kind to ourselves. But in failure, we often become our harshest critics. We replay our mistakes, berate ourselves for not being better, and compare ourselves to others who seem to be thriving. But what if we approached failure with the same empathy and kindness we would offer a dear friend? Self-compassion doesn't mean ignoring accountability or brushing off mistakes. It means acknowledging our humanity. It means recognizing that failure is a shared experience, something that connects us all. When we're able to hold ourselves with grace during difficult moments, we not only recover more quickly, but we also build a more solid foundation of resilience. Failure in its raw and unfiltered form strips away the noise and distractions. It shows us who we are, our strengths, our blind spots, and our fears, but it also shows us something else, our potential. When we stand in front of the mirror that failure holds up, we may see our vulnerabilities, but we also see our ability to adapt, learn, and grow. Ultimately, failure isn't just a reflection of what went wrong, it's a reflection of who we are becoming. Every setback holds a lesson, not just about what to do differently next time, but about who we need to be to navigate life's challenges with grace. It's in these moments of self-reflection that we discover our capacity for resilience, self-awareness, and most importantly, self-love. So, the next time failure holds up its mirror, take a breath and look closely, not with shame, but with curiosity. Instead of seeing someone who has fallen, see someone who is learning to rise. Failure is not a verdict, it's a chapter. And with each reflection, you have the chance to write the next page of your story with wisdom and compassion. Reframing ambition and letting go. Ambition. It's a powerful force that drives us to dream, to achieve, and to push the boundaries of what we believe is possible. It can fuel personal growth, inspire innovation, and create meaningful contributions to the world. But when ambition becomes unchecked or tied too tightly to our sense of worth, it can lead to burnout, disappointment, and feelings of failure. The key to harnessing ambition is learning when to hold on and when to let go. For many of us, ambition becomes entangled with our identity. We measure our value by how far we've climbed, how much we've accomplished, or how close we are to reaching a specific goal. When things go according to plan, this feels validating. But when we face setbacks, our ambitions, rather than inspiring us, can become a source of self-inflicted pressure. We might think, if I don't achieve this, I've failed. In reality, this isn't failure. It's an opportunity to reassess our relationship with ambition. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean abandoning your dreams or set. Instead, it means releasing the tight grip of attachment, the belief that your ambition defines your worth, or that success must look a certain way. It's about trusting that the path may change and that there is value in the process, even if the outcome differs from what you envisioned. One of the first steps in reframing ambition is understanding the why behind your goals. Ask yourself, why am I pursuing this? Is it because it aligns with my core values, or is it driven by a need for approval, validation, or comparison? Often, when we dig deep, we discover that some ambitions are shaped not by our true desires, but by societal expectations or the pressure to prove something to others. When ambition is fueled by external validation, it can feel like running on a treadmill. You're moving, but never quite arriving. No achievement is ever enough because the goalposts keep shifting. In contrast, when ambition is aligned with our authentic values, it becomes a fulfilling journey rather than a relentless chase. We find joy in the process, not just in the outcome. Letting go also involves releasing the fear of being seen as a failure. Many people hold onto their ambitions long after they've stopped serving them, simply because they're afraid of what others will think if they change course. But letting go of a goal doesn't mean you're weak or incapable. It means you're wise enough to recognize when something no longer aligns with your growth. There's a story often told in Buddhist teachings about a person holding a burning rope. The tighter they grip it, the more their hand burns. But instead of letting it go, they cling to it out of fear of losing the rope, fear of admitting that it's causing harm. Ambition can sometimes be like that burning rope. We hold on, thinking that perseverance is always the answer, even when it's clear that letting go is the path to peace. So how do we practice the art of reframing ambition and letting go? 1. Embrace flexibility. Life is unpredictable and our goals should have room to evolve. Holding on to rigid plans can create unnecessary suffering. Instead, view your ambitions as a guide, not a cage. Be open to new directions and opportunities that may take you somewhere even better than you imagined. 2. Redefine success. Ask yourself, what does success mean to me? Success doesn't have to be measured by promotions, accolades, or material gains. It can be about personal growth, meaningful connections, and inner peace. When you redefine success on your own terms, you free yourself from external expectations. 3. Detach from the outcome. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means doing your best without becoming consumed by the result. Focus on the effort and the experience. not just the end result. When you can pour yourself fully into something without needing a specific outcome, you experience a deeper sense of freedom and fulfillment. 4. Cultivate self-compassion. Sometimes we cling to ambition because we're afraid of failing ourselves. We think, if I don't achieve this, I'm not good enough. Practicing self-compassion means treating yourself with kindness, especially when things don't go as planned. It means reminding yourself that your worth is not tied to your achievements. 5. Recognize when it's time to let go. There's a fine line between perseverance and unnecessary struggle. Pay attention to how your ambition makes you feel. Is it energizing you or is it draining you? Are you pursuing your goal because it still brings you joy or because you're afraid of what it means to stop? Letting go doesn't mean failure. It means making space for something new. 6. Trust the process. When we let go of the need to control every detail, we open ourselves up to the flow of life. This doesn't mean we stop striving. It means we trust that life's timing and lessons are unfolding as they should. Trusting the process allows us to move through life with grace rather than resistance. Ultimately, ambition, when balanced with mindfulness and self-awareness, can be a beautiful force for growth and purpose. But when it becomes an unrelenting pursuit of external success, it can blind us to the present moment and the beauty of our own journey. Reframing ambition and learning to let go isn't about giving up on your dreams. It's about loosening your grip so you can breathe, reflect, and redirect when needed. It's about remembering that your value isn't determined by how much you achieve, but by how you live, learn, and show up for yourself and others. When we let go of the need to control everything and release the fear of failure, we find something far more profound: peace. And in that peace, we discover that we are enough. Not because of what we've accomplished, but simply because we are. Takeaway lesson: at the heart of every failure lies a choice: how we interpret it, how we respond to it, and how we allow it to shape our lives moving forward. Failure, in its essence, is neutral. It's neither inherently good nor bad. It's simply an event, a result of conditions, choices, and circumstances converging at a particular point in time. What gives failure meaning is the story we choose to tell ourselves about it. One of the greatest lessons failure can teach us is the importance of self-awareness. When we face setbacks, life is asking us to pause, reflect, and recalibrate. These moments, though painful, offer us a rare opportunity to step back from the noise of achievement and expectation and to ask deeper questions. What am I truly seeking? What can I learn from this, and what does success actually mean to me? In many ways, failure invites us to strengthen our resilience, the quiet, inner fortitude that helps us rise again, not out of desperation, but out of a newfound sense of clarity. Resilience isn't about pretending everything is fine or pushing ourselves to bounce back immediately. It's about honoring our emotions, acknowledging our wounds, and slowly rebuilding from a place of intention rather than fear. A powerful takeaway from failure is that it reveals our hidden strengths. While success can affirm our capabilities, failure shows us how much we can endure and still move forward. It teaches us patience in a world that glorifies immediacy, humility in moments when pride is bruised, and compassion, both for ourselves and others. It's also important to recognize that failure doesn't mean starting from zero. Even when things fall apart, the lessons, skills, and experiences we've gained remain with us. These invisible victories, the knowledge earned through mistakes, the grit developed in hard times, lay the foundation for future success. When we shift our mindset from "I failed" to "I am learning," we stop seeing failure as the end and start viewing it as a necessary step in our evolution. Moreover, failure reminds us of the importance of balance. In the pursuit of success, we can become so focused on the outcome that we neglect our well-being, relationships, or personal joy. When failure forces us to slow down, it offers us a chance to recenter and reassess our priorities. We can ask ourselves, am I chasing this goal because it truly aligns with who I am? Or am I driven by external pressures or fears? Another essential lesson from failure is the value of adaptability. Life rarely follows a straight path. The ability to pivot, adjust, and embrace new directions is a hallmark of growth. Sometimes, failure is life's way of redirecting us towards something better, even if we can't see it in the moment. By letting go of rigid expectations, we open ourselves up to unexpected possibilities that can lead to deeper fulfillment. Self-compassion is perhaps the most important takeaway of all. It's easy to be kind to ourselves when things are going well, but true self-love is tested in times of hardship. When we meet failure with harsh self-criticism, we deepen our wounds. But when we approach ourselves with understanding and patience, we create the conditions for healing and growth. Failure then becomes a bridge toward greater self-acceptance rather than a barrier to success. Failure also teaches us that life is cyclical. There will be seasons of achievement and seasons of struggle, times of certainty and times of doubt. But just as winter gives way to spring, failure too can give way to new beginnings. When we learn to embrace life's natural rhythms, we stop fearing setbacks and start trusting in our ability to navigate them. Finally, failure reminds us of our shared humanity. Everyone, regardless of their status or accomplishments, experiences failure at some point. By embracing our own setbacks, we cultivate empathy for others who are struggling. We become more supportive, understanding, and open-hearted, recognizing that behind every success story is a series of missteps and lessons learned. In the end, the greatest takeaway from failure is this: you are not defined by your setbacks. You are defined by how you grow from them. When we shift our perspective and see failure as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block, we liberate ourselves from the fear of falling short. We become free to live with authenticity, courage, and purpose. So the next time failure visits your doorstep, welcome it as a temporary teacher, not a permanent resident. Take time to listen to what it's trying to show you. And remember that every chapter of your story, even the difficult ones, plays a role in shaping the person you are meant to become. You are resilient, you are learning, and above all, you are worthy, just as you are. Let that truth guide you as you move forward, knowing that success isn't the absence of failure, it's the strength to keep going, growing, and finding meaning along the way.